And a pleasant good evening and welcome to another edition of sportsNOLAtv. We're so happy that you've joined us tonight ahead of the New Orleans Saints battling the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football. Ken Trahan with you, and as always, we'll be talking about the New Orleans Saints, also about LSU and Tulane, about prep football as well, and so much more. And we're glad that you've taken time to spend time with us this evening as we discuss these things with some outstanding journalists, including Amy Jones. Amy, it's great to have you with us.
Nice to be with you, and nice to be here without the Saints having lost and LSU having lost. So it'll be an interesting show without us having to dissect what went wrong.
That's a pretty good perspective to have. Brian Ellie Walsh of sportsNOLA.com. As always, a pleasure. Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Trahan. It's always great to be on this dais. It's a wonderful week, Thanksgiving. Y'all, right off the bat, y'all have a blessed Thanksgiving, and look forward to working this show with you guys as always.
So nice to hear him so upbeat.
I am.
Give thanks. It's special. Amen. Yes. Can I get an amen, Ricky Jackson?
You got an amen, Ken. I tell you what, man, it's always great to be here. I mean, we know the Saints got a tough one tonight, and we're looking forward to them pulling that one out. And Thanksgiving coming up, and they got a whole lot of football this week for us to watch. So, it's got plenty of football. We just hope that the Saints take care of their business tonight.
You bet. Hey, and a note on basketball, too. How about Anthony Davis?
Wow.
If the season ended today, wouldn't he be the MVP of the league?
Yeah, I think he'll be the MVP. I mean, the way he done got his shot going for him now, I mean, he done developed a whole lot, Brian. A lot of things that he needed to work on. You can see that he spent a lot of time in the gym getting prepared for this season. You can see the guy playing great basketball.
Unfortunately, Brian, the game at Utah wasn't televised the other night.
I know.
People didn't see career high 43 points. Unbelievable.
Yeah, 14 boards. I mean, he dominated. I mean, the summer in the World Games has made him just improved his game so much.
Well, I got the package, so I can watch every game.
Yeah. Oh. Well, why don't you invite us over?
Coach Cable got the NBA package, so you can buy the package pretty cheap. So I did that because of Pelican, where I can watch all the games.
And he's never invited us over.
No, absolutely not.
Something like that.
Kenny, I'm going to go on and say this. I think they will win a lot more games they did last year. They're still going to have a hard time getting in the playoffs.
All right, when we return in just a moment, we'll break down the Saints and the Ravens as sportsNOLAtv continues on WHNO TV 20. The Raven, all right? I got it, the Edgar Allan Poe reference. It's all good, man. Thanks for the literary work, Lenny. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv, ahead of the Saints and the Ravens, as in the football team. The Ravens from Baltimore, from the NFC North, from the same division as the Cincinnati Bengals, who seem to have a pretty good amount of success when they came to New Orleans, and the Ravens obviously hoping to repeat that. And Monday Night Football. So when you talk about Monday Night Football, Amy, you start with the streak of the Saints as they come in with a record of 4-6. The Ravens at 6-4. And the Saints, as you know, dominating in prime time. The stat is there for you. 12 straight primetime home games. Sean Payton, though, has not beaten the Ravens in his career with the Saints. Of course, only 2 games overall.
Yeah, Sean Payton hasn't, neither has Drew Brees. And what is very interesting coming into this is going to be 2 teams desperately looking to make sure that they come out with the win. The Saints looking to take over sole possession of first place in their division, believe that. And then, of course, the Ravens looking to stay competitive in the division that they're in. What's very interesting about this matchup, though, as you said, Kenny, is that the Saints, while on paper should not win this game, you can't count them out in the way that they play it and have played when it comes to primetime football.
Brian, health remains an issue for New Orleans when you look at some of the guys that might play but are not 100%, as well as the guys that won't play. We know Cooks is done. We know Bush is done. And, of course, you know what's going on with Cadet, who didn't practice much of the week, but he'll try to play. Pierre Thomas trying to come back. Meacham, who knows. So you got a lot of components here that really don't measure up. And you got guys trying to play like Keenan Lewis in particular, who's not 100%.
Right, and you mentioned Kyrie Robinson isn't playing. I hope they do get Pierre Thomas back on the field. I know that'll make you happy. It'll make me happy too. So if they can get him back, that's certainly going to add a lot to their offense. But Kenny, you're right. I mean, Rob Ryan is piecing together a unit to play on defense tonight, so it'll be interesting to see who plays and how much they play.
Ricky, Steve Smith has owned the Saints in the past with Carolina. I don't know that he's quite the same player at this stage. His last 4 games, he's got 14 catches total, nothing lighting the league on fire by any stretch. If he does play, Keenan Lewis figures to draw Steve Smith. Is that a big matchup for you in this game?
Well, that's a big matchup, but I'll tell you what, the whole key going to be what the defensive line do. I mean, Baltimore got some good guys up front. They got big guys up front, and they're going to want to pound the ball a lot. You know, that's kind of system that they have. But as far as the defensive backs, you know, we got a lot of guys banged up. They got a lot of good receivers. I mean, they got the boy from New Orleans, Kobe Jones. So they got a handful of great receivers, and we got a banged up secondary. But the whole key going to be to our offensive line, can they handle their defensive line with Drew Brees? I mean, when Zach Street went out the game last week, you seen chaos. I mean, Drew don't have no time to throw the ball. So whoever come in, they're going to have chip the guy and help those guys out. So that's going to be the whole key up front, what the defensive line do and the offensive line do.
Let's take a look at when the New Orleans Saints have the football, because when they do, they'll be facing a Baltimore defense that has been good at times and maybe not as good as you would think at times. You look at the comparison, the Saints, of course, second in total yards, third in passing yards, and the Ravens, on the other hand, 21st in that bottom category, which maybe has Drew Brees licking his chops a little bit, Amy. Now, they have not allowed any team or any player from another team to rush for 75 yards or more this year, so it would seem that if you want to do damage against the Ravens, you want to do it throwing the ball as compared to running the ball.
You would think that, but the thing that I think is very important to consider in this is that any good passing game is based off of having a very solid running game. And we've already talked about who isn't going to be on the field tonight for the Saints. And that is what gives me more concern than anything. If we're looking at a passing game that is strictly going to be relying on Drew's arm, well, then as long as there's no running threat, I don't think it's going to be as successful as it could be if you were at full force with that running game there to back it up.
Brian, you can always throw to set up the run, and maybe against Cincinnati, the Saints stuck with the run too long when it simply wasn't there, so they might amend that thought process if they experience a similar fate in this game in the first half.
Yeah, and you pointed out, Kenny, that Baltimore's pretty stout against the run. You know, they're going to have to open up this field. They're going to be without Brandon Cooks for the first time. It's going to be interesting to see how they deal with that, who's going to get the touches, if the vertical game is improved. So there's a lot of question marks going into this game, but, you know, if the Saints give Brees time, he should be able to have a really good game.
Ricky, it's all about receivers winning. Cooks isn't there anymore. Jimmy Graham's going to be the focal point of the defense. You know that. So it's really incumbent upon guys like Kenny Stills, Marcus Colston in particular, maybe even Joe Morgan, to win some one-on-one battles, correct?
I'll tell you what, Ken, they're going to be, Baltimore, they're going to come in licking their chops, because they seen what happened last week with Cincinnati. So a lot of these guys are going to play this game trying to be a stat game. But like you say, the Saints got some good receivers still. Now, if they catch the ball, Drew going to put the ball there. If they have time to throw the ball and catch the ball, the Saints should do well.
Well, of course, the Baltimore Ravens, on the other hand, offensively, have done some good things this year. Let's take a look at when the Ravens have the ball and the comparison that exists here in terms of total yards. They're in the upper echelon, 12th, but 8th in rushing, so they really run the ball well with Justin Forsett. 16th in passing, kind of middle of the pack there. Saints, conversely, not good in any area defensively, Amy. They're in the bottom tier in all of those elements thus far this year, and the Saints' defense is 30th in the league in third down defense, which is the most critical factor to be critical of. They can't get off the field on third down.
Well, I think that when you're looking at the Baltimore offense, and I was reading something earlier today that they were saying that it'll be very interesting to see how Joe Flacco does against the Saints defense. And I think the better question to look at in this particular situation is exactly what kind of numbers does he put up? Because a good quarterback, looking at what this defense looks like, should be able, unfortunately, to blister that secondary. It's very cobbled together. It's very piecemealed, as we all know. And Flacco having a good day, I don't know if we're going to be looking at necessarily a lot of third downs. I think that we could be looking at a very long night for that Saints defense.
Brian, Justin Forsett's had a really good year, averaging 5.4 yards per carry, right at the top of the league. And after Jeremy Hill did what he did to the Saints last week, you know that the Ravens are coming in wanting to run Forsett.
Absolutely, and Flacco needed this week break. He had not been playing well prior to the break. You know, the Saints, to me, Kenny, are in kind of a catch-22. Teams have done well by bringing extra players or extra pressure on Flacco. Problem is that Rob Ryan's got to cover up for this rebuilt secondary. So do you expose these DBs, by bringing more people in? Well, it'd be interesting to see how they attack Joe Flacco, but he's there to be taken. There's no doubt about it.
Ricky, they've got to take Forsett away. They've got to make Flacco throw the ball. If they do that, make him one-dimensional, then they can pressure the passer.
Well, I think he's one of the worst quarterbacks, in the NFL. He got I see that he have a Super Bowl ring and everything. He's a Super Bowl quarterback, but he's not one of the top quarterbacks. He get paid like one of the top quarterbacks, but I think the Saints got a good chance at him tonight.
Well, I mean,
Trent
obviously,
Dilfer has a Super Bowl ring as
There
well,
you
so
go.
that's, I just want
But
to, yeah.
quarterback, just because they got a Super Bowl ring, that don't mean that they
Yeah.
top quarterback. He's been surrounded by great teams.
score 28 or more, right? That's the panacea. You win the game, right?
Yeah, and it will be, and just to follow up on what you're saying, that it'll be very interesting to see what Flacco shows up. We talked about that when Andy Dalton was coming in, and what Andy Dalton were the Saints going to see with the Bengals. I think that same question exists with Baltimore coming in tonight.
Right. Interesting numbers. The Ravens and the Saints are scoring exactly the same amount of points a game, 26-1.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
But
I
you
mean, I would
brought
have
up-
never thought that,
You
know?
brought up a really good point earlier, which I wanted you to expound
Yeah.
on too, and that's the scheduling. Saints have really had the schedule work against them this year. Teams coming off of byes, they've had to play short weeks, everything else. They've had to travel off of short weeks, the whole deal. It seems as though they're at a competitive disadvantage virtually every week.
And Kenny, you know what? You look at next week. You don't want to look beyond this week, but look at next week. Pittsburgh is off this week.
Yes.
So they get another
Exactly.
team that's off a bye week,
Right.
and you go, whoa! All of a sudden, all of these things are working against the Saints in the same season. You go,
And they played Thursday night.
I
too.
know,
Yeah, correct.
I know,
Right. And they
I know.
got about 5 guys coming
Yeah.
back.
Well-
What the Saints really need, though, they just need a win. I mean, ain't nobody else in the division doing nothing. I mean, and ain't nobody gonna feel sorry for them. So tonight, they just need to go out and take care of business.
The conspiracy theorists have every bit of ammunition they need, Amy, because this is the 5th time, it will be 5 times in 6 weeks that the opponents had more preparation time than the Saints.
Well, do we really think that there's anything about the commissioner that loves any part of New Orleans? I mean, the elephant's in the room, let me say it, that, I don't think there's any of us that believe that the NFL goes out of its way to do anything to help New Orleans. I mean,
And as we go to break, Ricky, that's a big deal as a player. Shorter recovery time, the opponent has more recovery time. That's big, isn't
Well,
it?
not only that, you get players back. I mean, look how many guys Pittsburgh gonna get back next week. Look how many players the Ravens got back. So that's the whole key. You got 5 guys coming back who were starters. I mean, and that's what you look for. You look for that bye week and to get guys back healthy. So, Saints don't have chances right now to get their guys back healthy. Those guys got to play hurt.
Today's Sports NOLA TV is presented by Premier Kia of Kenner and Premier Automotive Group. Thank you to Troy Duhan, Premier Kia of Kenner, and the entire Premier Automotive family. Premier Kia of Kenner is located at 2712 Veterans Boulevard. As always, you can visit their website at premierkia.com. Back to talk NFL when we return on Sports NOLA TV in just a moment on WHNO TV 20. The week that was in the NFL leading into the Saints and Ravens to conclude the NFL weekend. Ken Trahan, Sports NOLA TV, and again, we start to get a little bit of separation in terms of who the better teams are in the league and who the worst teams are. And Amy, what got your attention this past weekend?
I think there's 2 games that really stood out for me. Number one, that Arizona-Seattle game. The fact that Seattle was so dominant when Arizona has played so well. And I think the other one is Kansas City, who's really been playing well this season, losing to Oakland. There were a couple other ones. Peyton off to a slow start, but he corrected things, and Denver got that win. But those 2 games in particular certainly stood out to me.
Ryan?
A couple of things, and I agree with. I forgot about the Oakland KC game on Thursday night. That was a big game. Mike Smith continues to just befuddle me. I think Mike Smith's days should be gone in Atlanta. Whether that happens or not, poor clock management costs him a game. My goodness, here's a club that's vying for a divisional championship, and his clock management was just very, very poor. Secondly, I don't know how Washington's going to be able to pay RG3. Okay, how he survived yesterday's beating against the Niners is beyond me. But he looks like he's digressed so much since he first entered the league. Maybe it's because of his injuries or not. I'm not sure what, but he doesn't look like anywhere like the kind of guy that I would want to be my starting quarterback as you go forward.
All right, before we get Ricky's take, let's take a look at standings as we speak heading into the Monday night game. The Saints, of course, now in first place, at least for the time being. And if they can win, they'll solidify that. If not, back into a tie, and the Falcons hold the tie break. Panthers, of course, at 3-7-1. Buccaneers at 2-9. It remains ugly, getting uglier all the time. Ricky, and I know you wanted to make your points about the NFL this past weekend as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, to me, looking at New England Patriots, I mean, everybody wrote Tom Brady off, but man, I watched that game yesterday, and Tom Brady the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't care what nobody say. He's one of the best quarterbacks ever to play in the NFL. He got a great arm. He sits back there and he finds his receivers real fast and quick. But just looking at the San Francisco, they hanging in there. So, they got a couple good teams I've been watching, trying to see who's going to be Super Bowl teams. That's what everybody watching now, playoff and Super Bowl team, trying to see where they stack up. So to see, like Heyman said, to see Seattle beat Arizona. A lot of people don't think Arizona that good. A lot of people think Arizona's been a fluke. So Seattle kind of showed people yesterday that Arizona's not good as they thought they was. So
I agree with you. I agree with you, Ricky and Amy. I think Arizona's going to have struggled down the stretch. They still got games against Seattle and San Francisco, if my memory serves me correctly. So they're not out of the woods yet. Drew Stanton has still got to prove himself, and we'll see what happens.
Before we move on, though, one thing I thought was very interesting, when you were talking about RG3, thought it was very interesting. Did any of you guys read the article that Dr. James Andrews, that did the knee surgery on him, that came out last week, that he is emphatic of the fact that he is not surprised at all at how RG3 is playing, considering he warned him, don't do this, you went back too early, and this is going to damage you the rest of the career, and he's coming out and saying, I told you.
Yeah, I mean, he's not even moving, not at all. I mean, really, he was a sitting duck against San Francisco.
You remember that first game he played in the league in New Orleans against the Saints.
He was
lightning. I mean, lightning. Totally different player now. I think you have to give a lot of credit to the Cincinnati Bengals. They backed up their win over the Saints with another solid win, and their defense was outstanding again. And kudos to the Dallas Cowboys, because they were down most of that game against the Giants on the road, and they came back and found a way to win. They're legitimate, and they're going to battle for the NFC Championship, and of course, big game with Philadelphia coming up. And then you've got another really good game, too, at Seattle and San Francisco. Two great rivalry games. I think the AFC is going to come down to those two teams, Seattle and New England, I believe. And I don't think Denver's good enough defensively from what I've seen. And then the NFC, hey, I think it's still wide open. But I think you got to give Dallas and Philadelphia a real crack at this thing, Brian.
Yeah, I think so, too. And Green Bay, of course, is a better club at home.
Right.
But you're right, Kenny. I mean, this is the great time of year when teams start, the cream rises, so to speak.
And Green Bay, New England coming up, too.
Right.
Green Bay, New England, but I tell you what, Philadelphia special team yesterday, man, they played awesome. I mean, just looking at them, but you don't know what Philadelphia team going to show up from week to week.
Yeah.
Well, they got so many skilled athletes, and they got one of them named Darren Sproles, who's been pretty good for them, too, hasn't he?
Yeah, that special team been great. They got a great running back from University of Pittsburgh, too.
Wait, you said week to week? I think with Philadelphia, it's half to half.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, when you look at what's going on right now in this league, I think the NFC is to be had. I think San Francisco still has a legitimate shot, because they're getting healthier. Aldon Smith's back, and if Kaepernick can play more consistently than he has, he got the winning drive. He does seem to do that on a pretty consistent basis. And if they do win and they get back to a championship game, how in the world can you even conceive of changing coaches? Seriously, Rick?
No, I mean, they won't change coaches. I mean, but the coach, he don't get along with the front office. So, if they don't win, you can see them changing. But as long as they win, that clean everything up.
If you look at the AFC North, because the Saints play their second of 3 consecutive teams from the North tonight, you've got Baltimore at 6-4. They're in last place in that division.
They can't afford
You've
to
got
lose.
the Saints at 4-6. and they're in first place. So go figure. I mean,
But you know that whole division over there, Baltimore can't afford to lose this game.
Oh, absolutely.
No, they
I
cannot.
agree.
Tonight they can't
You're
afford
right.
it. Then Pittsburgh coming in next week. They're going to be in a position where they can't afford to lose. So the Saints got some games coming up
Absolutely.
that these teams can't afford because the division is too tough. It's not like our division where we can, skip and beat them.
Well, I tell you what, throw kudos to the league again. We do it so seldom. But when they started playing those divisional games to end the regular season, that was a great decision, because there are some great games that are happening in the end of December involving the Saints, Carolina, Tampa Bay. These are games that they're going to have to win.
But our division is so bad this year. I read in the paper the other day they trying to reschedule. they trying to realign the whole thing now.
Yeah.
They trying to move us,
Yeah.
with other teams now to try to even it out.
And who would have thought that Detroit would be a contender because of its defense
Yeah, right.
rather than its offense?
Yeah.
Because that's truly the case. Our offense is sputtering. Their defense is shuddering. Scare you a little bit. It's all good, but that's why they're in the race as we speak. Well, it's time now for our trivia question of the day. Our trivia question is brought to you by Nicole's Limousine. Let us pick up your party. Nicole's Limousine. And again, our thanks to Mike Nicole for his support. We appreciate him. And LSU will play Texas A&M to close out the regular season Thanksgiving night. Who was the opponent for the Tigers' last game on Thanksgiving? And we'll give you a choice. Alabama, Arkansas, Tulane, or Texas A&M? Think about it. We'll have the answer when we return in just a moment as we get into our hot seat segment about great catches on sportsNOLAtv. And our Nicole's Limousine trivia question of the evening, brought to you by Nicole's Limousine, where you got to let us pick up your party. Who was the opponent for the Tigers' last game on Thanksgiving? Was it Alabama, Arkansas, Tulane, or Texas A&M? Brian Alley Walsh?
C.
Thank you. Thanksgiving night, 1983, in the Louisiana Superdome then. And I was there. Wally English, the head coach at Tulane. Different days, to say the least, when they used to play each other every year. Something, Ricky, that you miss, right?
Oh yeah, they should be playing each other now.
All right. That's Ricky. He said it. I believe it. I'm all for
We're
it.
going to sign that
Man of many words.
Oh, I mean,
Way to
good.
go, Ricky.
That's good for
They
the
don't call him
state.
the best color man for nothing.
Good for the state and the city.
You're right. I agree with you. Okay. It's time now for our hot seat segment, where we put Brian Alley Walsh on the hot seat with a hot topic of the day. And today's topic is very simple. The best catch in NFL history. Everybody's talking about this one. Odell Beckham of Newman High School and LSU last night. Right hand up, falling backwards, stays inside the pylon, fouls in the end zone, touchdown New York Giants, and the whole world blows up over greatest catch ever. And that was the basis of the conversation for the telecast the rest of the way. And it continues to be the topic of conversation on Twitter today. So our hot seat topic today is real simple, and the question is, was this the greatest catch in NFL history? Was it? Brian Alley Walsh, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Trahan. Because I'm one of the youngest people on the set, I'll defer about the historical significance to my elder partner over here. Look, I don't know how you could argue against that not being the greatest catch. Is it the greatest catch I've seen? I don't think there's any doubt that it is. Are there other, and I'll tell you why the catch is significant. There have been more impactful receptions, but as far as just the catch itself, you'd have to go a long way to tell me that that's not the greatest catch. You've got Dwight Clark, the catch. You've got David Tyree and the impact he made in that Super Bowl victory for the Giants. You've got Manningham's catch in the other Giants Super Bowl win. There have been some outstanding, the immaculate reception by Franco Harris, okay? There have been some outstanding catches or outstanding impactful plays, but words can't describe that play, okay? And we are told, we are now learning, Kenny, you've known it for years. Odell Beckham Jr., he practices this in pregame warmups. I mean, this guy, I call it not the catch, the snatch, because he's got a Velcro hand for a right hand, I have never, ever, think about his arm went back, okay, and he held onto that ball. I know he's got big hands, but that's a mighty, mighty strong young man. I can't use the superlatives to explain it. Yes, unequivocally, yes, it was the greatest catch of all time.
Well, I mean, it was a great catch, and I think it was one of the best catches you're going to see, especially by a young guy. The young guys these days don't usually have their skills and work habit that good. And he only had 3 fingers on the ball, and that's what made it so great, you know. Well, you know, looking at him in warm-up, man, he made some catches just like that in warm-up. So it was one of the best catches you're going to see. I've seen some great catches by Lynn Swann. The concentration that he had, guy was all over him, and Lynn Swann made some great catches in the Super Bowl. So, you know, there's been a whole lot of great catches. I played with Jerry Rice for 2 years. Man, I've seen some of the greatest catches that you ever want to see. But this go down as right along with that, one of the top catches ever. Plus it's on Sunday Night Football where the whole world can see it. And all the tweets he got from LeVon James and all the great athletes around the country made it more special.
Amy?
I enjoyed your, I'm almost speechless because Brian was so entertaining that it's taken me a few seconds to, but let me say this. You guys make great and valid points talking about the actual physicality of the game. Let me say this. If it's asked and posed to us, which it has been on this panel in Louisiana tonight, the answer is yes. And for one reason, besides how unbelievably athletic this catch was, emotion. This is a Louisiana product that played at LSU that is literally produced one of the most prolific catches in the history of NFL football. So will we say it was one of the greatest catches ever? Yes, and we should. Because this is one we actually can take ownership of. This is a guy that wasn't playing his high school days anywhere else but here in New Orleans, moved on to playing in Baton Rouge, and now we see him do it on a national stage. Wasn't a 12 o'clock game that he did it in. It wasn't a 3:25 kickoff that he did it in. He did it on prime time where the whole world got to see it, and this is a Louisiana product that did it. So my answer, yes.
You know, you go a step further, you bring up a great point, Amy. The battery, Manning to Beckham. Not only is it Louisiana, New Orleans, it's Newman. And you know, the only thing that people might find fault with is that it came in a meaningless game, if you will, in a game where they lost. Had it, you know, somebody made a great, I think Gary Myers of the New York Daily News wrote about, had it fallen on a much larger setting, a much larger circumstance, it would have been more meaningful.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ken, I can say this. The young man is one of the best football players I've seen. I mean, his work habit and the way he runs his routes and stuff, there ain't no other athlete out there no better than him.
If you want to know why LSU's not where they were last year, just look at the Titans and Zach Mettenberger, the Dolphins and Jarvis Landry, and the way he played yesterday, and the Giants and Odell Beckham. Greatest catch ever? Boy, that's a strong statement. It certainly ranks up there, but I think Brian made a good point. There's a difference between greatest and most significant. When you talk about the greatest catch ever, I saw one in the Louisiana Superdome in 1979 on Monday Night Football. The New Orleans Saints and the Oakland Raiders. Second quarter, tied at 7. Archie Manning to Tony Galbraith. Back of the end zone, one hand reaching back, pulls it back into his body, stays in bounds. Saints take a 14-7 lead en route to jumping out to a 35-14 lead with just over 6 minutes left in the third quarter. On their way there, their first winning season ever and their first playoff appearance, and they lost. 42-35. Raiders scored the rest of the points that day and won the game. Ironically, Ken Stabler on the other side, who became the Saints quarterback, succeeding who? Archie Manning. 3 of the greatest catches ever. It's the Trinity of Manning. As was mentioned previously, Eli Manning to David Tyree. Eli Manning to Odell Beckham. Archie Manning to Tony Galbraith. And you guys did a great job of hitting on all the others, too. The immaculate reception, unquestionably. Mario Manningham, good one. The catch, Dwight Clark, no doubt. And then Lynn Swann, good one there.
Yeah.
First time that Dallas and Pittsburgh played, 21-17. The unbelievable catch there.
Yeah.
You know, Lenny mentions Drew Pearson. That one just kind of fell into his hands on the Hail Mary, but it was a big play, obviously, and won a playoff game for Dallas at Minnesota. So as a result, greatest catch ever, you could certainly put it in that category. I'd put the Galbraith catch in terms of catches right there with it. Most significant catch ever? I don't know. I think you have to go with either Franco Harris or David Tyree. David Tyree was oblivion before that, and he went back to obscurity afterwards. Heck of a deal. When we return in just a moment, college football on sportsNOLAtv here on WHNO. Premier Automotive Group is making a difference in our community. Troy and Tracy Duhan founded Giving Hope NOLA to serve those in need in the greater New Orleans area. Giving Hope NOLA operates the food pantry of New Orleans, which has fed thousands of people hot meals since it opened in 2013. We specifically target both children and the elderly in New Orleans East. Giving Hope NOLA and Premier Automotive is making a difference. Learn more by visiting givinghopenola.org. We hope you will. Ken Trahan, SportsNOLAtv. The LSU Tigers were off this past weekend, licking their wounds after being shut out at Arkansas, which, by the way, doesn't look so bad now after Arkansas trashed Ole Miss this past weekend. Brett Bielema's team is coming on strong, and now the Tigers face another team that's kind of been disappointing, the Aggies of Texas A&M, on Thanksgiving night. Eat your turkey and then sit down and watch the Tigers and the Aggies on Thursday night. Of course, LSU 2-0 against A&M since the Aggies joined the SEC. Scoring rankings, LSU 71st on offense, 5th on defense, which kind of makes the point, Amy, of the kind of season they've had. Their defense has gotten progressively better. Their offense has gotten progressively worse.
Yeah, and with the Tigers in this particular game coming up on Thanksgiving night, LSU needs to win, if for no other reason. It'd be a hard thing to imagine LSU going into the offseason with a 7-5 regular season. That just didn't even sound right. But aside from that, they need a solid win against Texas A&M, preparing for whatever bowl game that they end up going into. And you don't want to fall further down in the bowl rankings either. I mean, I hate to say this, but there is a level of pride when it comes to LSU that, you know, seeing them in just one of those really low-tier bowls, there's something about it just doesn't seem right.
I agree. You know, if the Tigers are going to extend this at least, 8 wins a year for Miles in all the 10 years, they need a win. You know, I actually had more confidence if Johnny Manziel was playing Thursday night, because they did such a great job against him, John Chavis, and his defense. You know, I'm not sure what to expect. I'm hoping that we'll see Brandon Harris. Okay, I'm hoping that he gets a lot of snaps. I don't know if it's going to happen.
I don't think it will.
Yeah.
But Ricky, go ahead.
Well, I mean, you know, LSU got to play some guys this year to get ready for next year. So, I mean, you know, that's going to be the whole key. They need to beat Texas A&M, because if they don't, they're going to go to a lower bowl, and that's going to hurt your recruiting. So, you know, they need this win real bad to keep guys that want to come to LSU.
Well, Charlie Baglio of LSU said it at the New Orleans Quarterback Club today. If Brandon Harris was practicing well enough, don't you think he'd be on the field? There's a reason he's not playing. And the coaches obviously feel that way because they've struggled mightily on offense and they still haven't put him in the game. So I'm not sure he's the future either. They clearly must recruit a quarterback. Goes without saying. And Amy, this is really an attitude game because, as mentioned, neither team has anything to play for other than, you know, which mid-level bowl game are they going to. So it's all about who wants to play, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing that's scary about LSU is that we've seen that several times this season, that they've really kind of limped onto the field. And there's been that feeling at some point in a couple of those games that there just wasn't that impetus to win that a lot of times that we're used to seeing, especially in a couple of those blowout games that ended up being a bit of a surprise. So in terms of this, yeah, especially when there is nothing on the line, you're playing for pride. You're playing for making sure that you have that 8-win season. You're playing not to drop any further in the bowl. But I think Ricky's point is probably the most important. You're playing for what you're going to be doing in the offseason from that recruiting standpoint. They need a quarterback. It's desperate. I mean, there's a lot of rumors right now about junior college transfers that are coming in. So we'll see what happens from all of that. But really, that quarterback situation is frightening.
Well, while LSU continues to struggle offensively, and they clearly need a quarterback. Tulane's quarterback put up some pretty good numbers, but it didn't translate into points as the Green Wave went to East Carolina, and they fell way short, 34-6 the final. The game was much closer for most of the game than the final score. Tulane did it passing. Tanner Lee threw for 301 yards, a career high. They couldn't run the ball at all, though, in this game, which is contrary to what they've done much of the year. But the real problem, Brian, was they gave up 497 yards. And isn't it ironic that the only points they got were 2 field goals, something they haven't been able to do all year long?
Congratulations to Mr. Zaraka for taking 2 field goals. So there is a positive come out of it. Look, they're just overmatched. I don't know what else to say about it. They're overmatched. And look, I think they may have the longest season on record. They got another off week. They played Temple on December the 6th. I thought it seemed like I thought they'd had their 2 off weeks already, Kenny, but that's not the case. But you know what? Tanner Lee, 301 yards, keeps plugging away. And I think, Kenny, you told me that Lionel Washington makes a great point. You know, at this stage of the season, they are no longer young. Okay, those freshmen might as well be incoming sophomores. You know, they can't hang their hat on just being a young club anymore, making mistakes. You know, you've got to go out and play.
Ricky, I love coaches who don't make excuses, and I thought that was pretty cool on Lionel Washington's part.
Well, I mean, you know, they've been over there for 3 years now. So, I mean, it's time to win ball games. You can't make excuses when you've been over there for 3 years because you're supposed to have junior class that's supposed to be pretty good, and you mix them up with the sophomore and the freshman. So they're just not getting the job done. And coach got to go back to the drawing board and keep these guys interested in the system that he's running, because to me, you know what I mean, the system that they're running is totally different from what these guys used to.
Amy, it's pretty interesting. The other comment that Lionel Washington made, who played in the NFL for 15 years and coached for 12 years in the NFL, is that Tulane has simply been too inconsistent in not one area, not two areas, but every area of the game this year. Case in point, we talked about how they run the ball well. They ran it great a week ago, but didn't throw it well. They threw pick sixes all over the place. This week they throw it well, and they rush for under 30 yards. That's a perfect illustration of the lack of consistency.
Well, their lack of consistency translates into their lack of winning. And I'll tell you this, one thing that is very disconcerting, if you will, about the Tulane program is that there are far too many people that are turning their idea and attention when looking at Tulane of, well, I pay attention only because there may be a player or two that will advance on to the NFL, and I'm following for who that player may be, more so than actually believing in the success of the program.
Stay with you, Amy. Of course, two other notes in college. Southeastern Louisiana in the playoffs again. Outstanding job. Coach Roberts done a wonderful job. They've got a really good offense and nothing but the best to the Lions moving forward. And Nicholls State trying to move forward after another awful season, and they do so by hiring a new coach and a guy I know very well and a friend of Timmy Rebo, who was an outstanding high school coach for many years, did a great job coming out of Destrehan. Frankly, should have been the hire last time for Nicholls State. He'll lead the Louisiana Lafayette staff to go to Nicholls State, and I know you know ULL pretty well, so obviously this is a good hire.
Yeah, and I will say this, everyone in the UL system is very, very excited for what is going to happen with Coach Rebo. He's done a great job with that UL program. He's very deserving of this, and frankly, it could be the best thing that has happened to that Nicholls program, really maybe even its history.
It's a local job. It's got to be a local guy, right?
Absolutely, and you know, we had addressed this issue a couple of weeks ago, and you're right, Kenny, I can't say it any better than you with regards to Rebo and what he's going to mean to that program.
We'll take a time out here. When we return in just a moment, we'll turn our attention to high school football and the playoffs getting deeper as sportsNOLAtv continues. It's a special edition of the John Forcade Show this week on Tuesday rather than Thursday, since Thursday is Thanksgiving. So Tuesday night, 6 p.m., the John Forcade Show. And you won't want to miss it here on WHNO. And also want to tell you that Ken Berthelot will be pinch hitting for Mike Detillier, who's on assignment this week. So John will have Ken Berthelot with him Tuesday night, 6 p.m. here on WHNO, Channel 20. You won't want to miss it on Tuesday night rather than Thursday night this week. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv, and high school football is always a pleasure of ours. And we get into our sportsNOLA.com, Greater New Orleans Quarterback Club, WHNO, Channel 20, WGSO, 990 AM Prep Player of the Week for week number 12. And he is St. James sophomore quarterback Lowell Narcisse. Narcisse has had a brilliant career already. And what a game he had against Laurelville on the road. The 9th-seeded Wildcats went to Laurelville and won 46-8, largely because Narcisse completed 24 of 38 passes for 392 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he rushed 15 times for 95 yards and 3 more touchdowns in a brilliant performance. And oh, by the way, sorry recruiters, you gotta wait. He's a sophomore, and he's really good for Dwayne Jenkins out of St. James High School. Lowell Narcisse, our prep player of the week. Speaking of high school football, of course, the playoffs getting deeper now, depending on which side of the ledger you're on. You're either going to the semifinals now or the quarterfinals. Let's start with select. That's where the semifinals are set for this weekend, and it's all local teams in the semifinals. John Curtis Christian taking on Brother Martin Friday night at Tad Gormley Stadium. We'll have that one as part of the original on our radio show statewide, including on WGSO 990 AM locally. And then on Saturday, you got the rematch between Rummel and Jesuit. That's a 6 p.m. start at Tad Gormley Stadium on Saturday evening. And we'll have that one on radio as well. Looks like on Fox Sports 1280 in the market. Other great matchups, Division II, St. Charles Catholic at Parkview Baptist, a pair of traditional powers. Catholic New Iberia, the 1 seed, coming to New Orleans to take on the Newman Greenies, and powerful Riverside at equally powerful defending state champion Calvary Baptist in a monster matchup. Now we flip it to the non-select quarterfinals, and a rematch game on the river. Doesn't get any bigger than this. Biggest rivalry in Louisiana, in my mind. Hahnville-Destrehan, you might want to get there on Thursday. Acadiana, after beating Ponchatoula, Ted Davidson doing it again. What a program. And there at Mandeville, Kyle LeCompte Skipper's playing great. Warren Easton and Benton. Warren Easton just putting up points like you wouldn't believe. Great matchup. Landry Walker at Franklin's, and boy, that is a good one. Neville at Endicott, rematch of the state championship game of a couple of years ago. South Terrebonne will be at Plaquemine, figures to be high scoring. Amite at Jennings in a good one. The Warriors are good. Manny, as a team that was in the Dome last year, at St. James. That's another delicious matchup. Plain Dealing will be at West St. John. The Rams, really good. And Basile is at Kentwood, and the Kangaroos are really good also. Some of the matchups for this weekend. And Brian, I know that there are a lot of appetizing matchups there, and you got a lot of games you can go see in the metropolitan area. And you got those two Division I matchups. And the thing that's good about that is one is Friday, one is Saturday. So they both figure to get crowds maybe in excess of 10,000.
Listening to you describe these games makes me hungry, my friend.
Good.
But no, there are some good games, both in the select and non-select. I just could go on and on about this non-select and select. We can't. But there's some good games, and you don't want to. These kids deserve to be recognized, and so they are.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, looking at Brother Martin, and select and going back with Destrehan. Those two guys, the team that's still going forward. So, that's what I keep up with, those two teams.
Destrehan has, to me, the best players in 5A, but will it translate? And Amy, obviously, from the Lafayette area, you got Acadiana still ringing the bell, and why not? They always do. Coach Davidson is remarkable. He's a great coach.
Yeah,
what a program.
He's a playoff coach. It literally is. He's a playoff coach. But I'm telling you, that Rummel-Jesuit game, I think it's going to be awesome. Both of those teams beat very good teams in the quarterfinals. So it'll be that'll be a just knockdown drag out, I would assume.
And speaking of that game, Ricky, you're talking about a rematch game. Those are so difficult. Same thing with Destrehan Hahnville. When you have to play each other a second time in a matter of 5 or 6 weeks, that's difficult for both teams, isn't it?
I mean, it's hard to recruit. Hard to scout. That's the whole thing about it. You don't have to do a whole lot. You know what they did last time, so you just plug in from there.
I'm hoping that Rummel and Curtis ultimately meet. Nothing against Martin or Jesuit. I'm just hoping that Rummel and Curtis meet for the Division I championship.
People have been waiting for that one for a long, long time, but they've got very tough opponents
to
get there, so it's going to be fun to watch this coming weekend. We'll take a time out here. When we return, picks on the Saints and the Ravens on WHNO TV 20. Whether you're a web surfer, old school radio fan, or TV junkie, you've likely heard of the new 2014-2015 Kia lineup. From dramatic facelifts to the addition of convenience features to enhance performance and safety, this year's models are the best Kia has offered yet. So what are you waiting for? Come on out to Premier Kia of Kenner. Great prices and awesome staff. 2712 Veterans Boulevard. Go to premierkia.com. Nice to see Brian and his family being featured prominently in the Kia commercial here. So, Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv. The Saints and the Ravens coming up in just a few minutes in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. All right, so we get right to it as the Saints come in at 4-6, the Ravens at 6-4. We've talked about the divisions. We've talked about the fact that the Saints haven't beaten the Ravens under Sean Payton. So, will this be the time that it happens, Amy?
No. I said it last week. I'm going to say it again. I just think that the Saints secondary way too banged up, regardless of really what Joe Flacco shows up, because I think that Forsett, if Flacco's not playing well in the air, I think Forsett does find a way to get it done on the ground. I'm hoping I'm wrong. Let me caveat what I'm saying by saying that, but I just don't think that even cobbled together, the Saints defense has enough to stop any offense right now.
My brain says that the Saints will not lose their third in a row at home. Okay, that's my brain. But my heart says, I think they will. I think they will lose tonight, and that's the answer I'm going with. They just haven't shown me enough. And look, there's still not that sense of urgency. Atlanta keeps losing. Carolina ain't playing, and Tampa's out of the mix. there's not that sense of urgency where they have to win tonight. I say they don't.
Ken, you know, Brian can always sugarcoat everything, so that's why I call him Sugar. But I tell you, you know, the Saints, this will be their 13th win for prime time, so that's what I'm looking for. They won 12 straight. We're looking to keep that going tonight.
Well, I'm going to go along with Amy and Brian. I think that the Ravens will win the game somewhere along the lines of 28-24. Close game. I think that the Ravens are a better football team, and I think they've played a tougher schedule today by and large, and they're playing a tougher division. I think the Saints have the ability to win the game, but as I said earlier, that's why I said 28. 28 or more, that's what they're going to need to win this game, I do believe. And unlike Brian, I think it's the other way around. My heart says Saints, my head says Ravens. I think I got the equation right. I'm just saying, because we all love to see the Saints win. And oh, by the way, I've picked them to win every game until this point. So at some point, you got to jump off, and maybe, just maybe, Amy, will be good luck doing that.
Well, it would be a great way to start Thanksgiving week, wouldn't it? Something to be thankful for.
You know, I definitely think there's a sense of urgency. Okay, I really do.
Happy Thanksgiving to you guys.
Happy
It's
Thanksgiving
a real
to
blessing
you.
to be with each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Want to thank our crew. Wish them happy Thanksgiving, and wish you happy Thanksgiving as well. Go enjoy the Saints game. Until next time, Ken Trahan, thanks for joining us. Be a good sport, and God bless you one and all. Rounding third and heading home. So long.